10 years. That's how long I waited. 10 years of smiling at his wedding photos on Facebook. 10 years of watching him climb the corporate ladder while I rebuilt my life from nothing. 10 years of biting my tongue every single time someone asked me, "Hey, are you still friends with that guy?" And then one day an email landed in my inbox. A simple recruitment inquiry. They wanted to know about a candidate's character, his work ethic, his integrity. The candidate? My former best friend, the company, the dream job he'd been chasing for his entire career. I stared at that email for 3 hours, my finger hovering over the keyboard, and I thought about everything he'd taken from me, everything he'd destroyed, everything he thought I'd forgotten. But I hadn't forgotten. Not a single second of it. What I did next didn't just cost him that job, it unraveled his entire life. If you've ever been stabbed in the back by someone you trusted more than anyone in the world, if you've ever dreamed about the universe finally delivering justice, then you need to hear this story. Hit that like button right now, subscribe if you're new here, and buckle up, because this is one of the most calculated, patient, and absolutely devastating revenge stories you'll ever hear. Let's dive in. Let me take you back 15 years. I was 23, fresh out of college, and working my first real job at a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. The pay was mediocre, the hours were brutal, but I was hungry, hungry to prove myself, hungry to build something. That's where I met him. Let's call him Jake. Jake started 2 weeks after me. Same age, same desperate ambition, same sense that we were both destined for something bigger than cold calling clients and formatting PowerPoint decks at midnight. We clicked instantly. Within a month, we were inseparable, grabbing beers after work, staying late to help each other with projects, talking about the businesses we'd start someday, the empires we'd build. He became more than a coworker, more than a friend even. He was like a brother, the person I trusted with everything. My fears, my dreams, my stupidest ideas at 3 a.m. When my dad died that first year, Jake was the one who sat with me in the hospital parking lot for 4 hours, not saying anything, just there. You ever have someone like that? Someone you'd take a bullet for without thinking twice? Yeah, that was Jake. 2 years in, we got the idea. The big one. We'd been watching the social media marketing space explode, seeing these massive brands fumble their online presence, and we realized we could do this better. We could build an agency that actually understood digital strategy, that could help companies navigate this new world. So we started planning. Nights, weekends, every spare moment. I'd handle the creative side, content strategy, brand voice, campaign development. Jake would manage operations, client relations, business development. Perfect partnership, right? Complementary skills, total trust, shared vision. We spent 8 months building it. I'm talking detailed business plans, financial projections, potential client lists, service packages, pricing models. I designed our entire service framework, created templates, wrote sample campaigns. We were calling it Momentum Digital. I still remember staying up until 4 a.m., perfecting that name. We'd planned to launch in 3 months. We had 5 potential clients already interested. We were so close I could taste it. And then one Monday morning, everything shattered. I walked into the office that day feeling good, confident. Jake and I had a meeting scheduled during lunch to finalize our LLC paperwork. We were really doing this, but Jake wasn't at his desk. Weird, but whatever. I figured he was in a meeting. Then my boss called me in. Sarah, the department VP, she had this expression I couldn't read. Not quite angry, but something. "We need to talk about your side project," she said. My stomach dropped. We'd been so careful. We hadn't used company resources, hadn't contacted clients during work hours, hadn't done anything that could be considered a conflict of interest. But someone had talked. Someone had told management. "I don't know what you've heard, but..." "Jake came to me Friday," she interrupted. "He told me everything." The room tilted. "He was concerned," she continued, looking at her notes. "Said you'd been pressuring him to help you start a competing agency, that you'd been stealing company strategies, client information, proprietary templates, that you'd been using company time and resources to build this business. He said he told you multiple times it was unethical, but you kept pushing him. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what I was hearing. That's not what happened. We were building this together. It was his idea as much as... He showed me evidence, she said, sliding a folder across the desk. Emails you sent him. Documents you created, all time-stamped during work hours on company computers. I opened the folder with shaking hands. And there it was, emails from my account. Documents with my name on them, except the context was all wrong. Messages were edited, stitched together to make it look like I was pressuring him, threatening him, acting alone. Timestamps I knew were wrong, but couldn't prove. He'd been planning this, documenting everything, twisting every conversation, every collaborative moment into evidence against me. Jake specifically requested we handle this quietly, Sarah continued. He doesn't want to press charges or make this a big thing. He just wants to make sure the company is protected. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign, effective immediately. We'll tell people you're pursuing other opportunities. You sign this NDA and non-compete agreement, and we won't pursue legal action for theft of intellectual property. Legal action? I didn't steal anything. This was our project. But she wasn't listening. She slid the paperwork across the desk, and I saw Jake's signature already on it, witnessing my termination. My best friend, my brother, I signed. What choice did I have? They'd built a case. They had evidence. I was 25 years old with $2,000 in my bank account and no lawyer. I signed, packed my desk in a box while everyone watched in confused silence, and walked out. Jake never even looked at me. Just kept his eyes on his computer screen, typing away like nothing was happening. The non-compete meant I couldn't work in marketing in Chicago for 2 years. The NDA meant I couldn't tell anyone what really happened. The resignation under investigation on my record meant no one would hire me anyway. I called Jake 67 times that first week. 67. He never answered. Never responded to texts, emails, nothing. I drove to his apartment and he wouldn't open the door. I could see his shadow through the peephole, just standing there, listening to me beg for an explanation. Nothing. It took me 3 weeks to find out why. Jake launched Momentum Digital 6 weeks after I was fired. Our business, our name, our entire strategy, except now it was just his. He'd taken everything we'd built together, every template, every pitch, every client lead, and claimed it as his own creation. The 5 clients we'd been courting, they all signed with him. Why wouldn't they? As far as they knew, he was the sole founder, the visionary behind this exciting new agency. And the company we'd worked for? They became his first major client. Because of course they did. He was the loyal employee who'd protected them from a thief. I spiraled. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I drank too much, stopped leaving my apartment, burned through my savings in 4 months. My mom begged me to come home to Indiana. My friends stopped inviting me places because I'd just sit there radiating bitterness. I was drowning in this toxic cocktail of rage and helplessness and betrayal so deep, it felt like my chest was caving in. At my absolute lowest point, sitting on my bathroom floor at 2 a.m., with an empty bottle of whiskey, I had this moment of clarity, this cold, hard realization. I could let this destroy me, or I could survive, get stronger, rebuild, and wait. Because something told me that karma, that the universe, that whatever cosmic justice exists, it wouldn't let this stand forever. Jake had built his empire on a foundation of lies and betrayal, and eventually, that foundation would crack. I just had to be patient enough to see it happen. So I chose to survive. I moved to Indianapolis, started over completely, took a job in sales, something outside the non-compete, and it was humiliating. I was making less than I'd made right out of college, working for a company that sold industrial HVAC systems to warehouses. But it was honest work, and it got me out of bed every morning. Slowly, painfully, I rebuilt. I went to therapy and actually confronted what had happened instead of just drowning in it. I reconnected with old friends. I stopped drinking. I started running, lifting weights, taking care of myself. And I watched. I never unfriended Jake on social media. Never blocked him. I watched from a distance as Momentum Digital grew, as he hired his first employees, landed bigger clients, opened a second office, watched him get engaged to his college girlfriend, Amanda. watched the wedding photos, the honeymoon in Santorini, the new house in the suburbs. He looked happy, successful, like someone who'd earned everything he had. It ate at me sometimes. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, but I also knew that I was building something real, something that belonged to me. After the non-compete expired, I carefully re-entered marketing, started freelancing, built a small client base, kept my head down, no agency, no big moves, just steady, honest work. I wasn't trying to compete with Jake or reclaim what he'd stolen. I was just trying to build a life. And then, 10 years after he destroyed mine, I got the email. It came on a Tuesday, a generic subject line, reference request, confidential. The sender was from Ogilvy. Yes, that Ogilvy, one of the most prestigious advertising agencies in the world. They were considering a candidate for a senior vice president position, a role that would put him in charge of their entire Midwest digital division. Huge job, career-defining, the kind of position that only comes around once. The candidate had listed me as a professional reference from our time working together at our first company. The candidate was Jake. I had to read it 3 times. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. After 10 years of silence, of pretending I didn't exist, he'd listed me as a reference. And I understood why immediately. We'd worked together at that first company for 2 years before the betrayal. On paper, I was his peer, someone who'd seen his work ethic and abilities during those formative years. Ogilvy was doing thorough background checks, and they'd want to talk to people from every stage of his career. He probably thought I'd moved on, that I'd forgotten, that I'd give some generic positive reference because who holds a grudge for 10 years, right? He didn't know that I'd spent those 10 years watching, waiting, becoming someone who understood exactly how devastating the truth could be when deployed at precisely the right moment. I now stared at that email for hours, and I thought about everything. The friendship we'd had, the brother I'd lost, the life he'd stolen, the decade I'd spent rebuilding. And I thought about what kind of person I wanted to be. Did I want to be someone who let betrayal go unanswered? Someone who took the high road while the villain rode off into the sunset? Or did I want justice? At 11:47 p.m., I clicked reply. I didn't write some emotional screed. I didn't rage about what he'd done to me. That would have been easy to dismiss as bitterness or vendetta. No, I was surgical. I wrote a professional, measured response. I confirmed that yes, I'd worked with the candidate at our first company, and then I carefully, factually, laid out the timeline. How we'd developed a business plan together for a digital marketing agency. How we'd collaborated on strategies, client lists, service frameworks. How all of that happened while we were both employed at the company, using our shared knowledge and experience. How the candidate had then reported me to management, claiming I was acting alone and stealing company property. How I'd been forced to resign under an NDA and non-compete agreement. How 6 weeks later, the candidate launched that exact business, using that exact name, contacting those exact clients, implementing those exact strategies. I attached documentation. Archived emails that hadn't been edited, messages from the early planning stages that showed collaboration, not coercion. Screenshots of Momentum Digital's original website, showing copy I'd written, frameworks I'd designed, time-stamped evidence that the business was already substantially developed before I was forced out. I didn't call him a thief. I didn't call him a liar. I just presented facts, dates, evidence. And then I wrote this. I want to be clear. The candidate is talented, and I believe Momentum Digital's success demonstrates genuine business acumen. However, I feel obligated to provide complete context regarding the circumstances of his company's founding. I leave it to your judgment whether this history is relevant to the position you're considering him for. Professional, neutral, devastating. I hit send at 12:23. And then I waited. Ogilvy responded 3 days. Later with a brief thank you for my candor. They didn't tell me their decision, obviously, but I knew. Jake didn't get the job. I found out later, through mutual connections who'd stayed in loose touch, that Ogilvy had done a deep dive after my reference. They'd contacted the original company, requested his employment records, interviewed other people from that time period. The inconsistencies in his story started appearing everywhere. The timeline didn't match his resume. Other colleagues remembered our partnership, remembered the sudden termination, remembered thinking it seemed fishy. The Ogilvy rejection would have been enough. That dream job, that validation he'd been chasing, gone. But karma wasn't finished. Because here's the thing about building an empire on a lie. Once the foundation cracks, everything crumbles. Ogilvy didn't just reject him quietly. In advertising, reputation is everything, and word travels. Whispers started circulating about discrepancies in his background, questions about Momentum Digital's founding, concerns about integrity. 2 major clients pulled their contracts within 6 months. They didn't make a big announcement, but they left. And in an industry built on trust, that meant something. His investors, he'd taken on private equity funding 3 years earlier, started asking uncomfortable questions, started looking more carefully at the company's foundation, started wondering what else might not be exactly as presented. And then Amanda found out I wasn't actively trying to destroy his marriage. I want to be clear about that. I'd answered a reference check honestly. What happened next was just consequences. But Amanda was smart. She'd always been smart. And when Jake came home stressed about the Ogilvy rejection, about clients leaving, about investor pressure, she started asking questions, digging, trying to understand what was happening to their perfect life. And somehow, maybe through mutual friends, maybe through her own investigation, she discovered the truth about Momentum Digital's founding, about me, about what Jake had actually done, about the fact that he'd lied to her for their entire relationship, that the business she'd celebrated, the success she'd posted about, the life they'd built, it was constructed on betrayal and theft, that the man she'd married had systematically destroyed someone who'd called him a brother. They separated within weeks. I know this because Amanda reached out to me. 8 months after I'd sent that reference, I got a Facebook message from her. I don't know if you'll even see this. Jake deleted me from his life, along with everything else when I left. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry. I never knew. He told me you were someone from work who'd tried to steal from the company. I believed him. I trusted him completely, and I'm so sorry for everything you went through. I wrote back, "You have nothing to apologize for. You were lied to, just like everyone else. I hope you find happiness." She responded, "For what it's worth, I don't think he'll ever forgive himself for what he lost. Not the job or the clients. Me. He destroyed us because he couldn't live with what he'd done to you. The guilt ate him alive once it was finally out in the open." I read that message 50 times. Jake's life didn't completely collapse. He still has Momentum Digital, though it's smaller now. Some clients stayed, the business survives, but the trajectory changed. The meteoric rise stopped. The dream of being an industry titan, of joining an elite agency like Ogilvy, of being respected as a visionary, that died. His divorce was finalized 7 months ago. He sold the house. Last I saw, and yes, I still occasionally check, he's living in a downtown apartment, dating someone new, posting less frequently. The confident, victorious smile from those wedding photos, it's gone. And me? I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I run a small but successful consulting practice. I work with clients I respect on projects I believe in. I have a partner who knows the whole story and loves me anyway. I sleep well at night. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder if I went too far. If answering that reference honestly, knowing it would unravel everything, was justice or just revenge. But then I remember being 25 years old, sitting on that bathroom floor, feeling like my life was over, because someone I trusted had systematically destroyed everything I'd built for his own gain. I remember the years of rebuilding, the therapy, the nights I couldn't sleep because the betrayal burned so deeply. And I remember that I didn't ruin Jake's life. He did. I just finally told the truth. Here's what I learned. Karma isn't magic. The universe doesn't automatically balance the scales, but if you survive long enough, if you rebuild honestly and wait patiently, sometimes life gives you a single moment, one chance to tell the truth at exactly the right time. What you do with that moment, that's up to you. Maybe Jake will rebuild too. Maybe he'll become someone better, someone honest. Maybe this was the lesson he needed. Or maybe some betrayals just cost everything. If this story gave you chills, absolutely destroy that like button right now. And tell me in the comments, would you have answered that reference honestly, or would you have stayed silent? Do you think this was justice or just revenge? I genuinely want to know what you think. And of course, if you want more stories about karma, betrayal, and those incredibly satisfying moments when the universe finally delivers, hit that subscribe button. We've got stories you won't believe coming up. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.